He left the village with a promise. I'll come back for you. But when he returned, even his own shadow didn't recognize him. Somewhere between ambition and love, something broke. And by the time Mara realized the truth, the man she married was long gone. Only his body came back. The sun had just begun to stretch its golden arms across the quiet village of Maplewood. Smoke curled lazily from small kitchen huts, and the scent of boiled yam and palm oil floated through the air. Birds whistled in the distance, while children ran barefoot along dusty paths, laughing at nothing in particular. In a small compound at the edge of the village, Mara knelt beside a bucket, washing her husband's shirts with slow, gentle strokes. The rhythm of her hands matched the calm of morning. "Zach," she said softly, glancing up at him. "You didn't even touch your food last night. What's on your mind again?" Zach smiled faintly, but didn't reply right away. His gaze was fixed on the long road leading out of Maplewood. The road to somewhere bigger, faster, and full of promises. "I keep thinking about the city. There's too much happening out there. Money, opportunities, real life. I can't just stay here forever, Mara." Mara stopped scrubbing, her hand still resting on one of his shirts. "The city?" she asked quietly. "Zach, dreams are good, but sometimes the things we chase can end up chasing us back." He chuckled, shaking his head. "Peace doesn't build a house, Mara. Money does. And if I want to give you the life you deserve, I can't stay here fishing in the same small pond." Mara rinsed the shirt, the water turning cloudy around her hands. "Just promise me something," she said in a low voice. He looked at her curiously. "Promise you what?" "That you won't forget me when the city lights become brighter than home." Zach stepped closer and lifted her chin. His eyes softened, his voice steady. "Forget you? Mara, you're my heart. When I make it, I will come back for you and the whole village will dance when they see what we have become." She smiled, but the smile trembled. "Then I will wait," she said, trying to believe her own words. The next morning, Zach left Maplewood before sunrise. A small brown bag hung over his shoulder. His eyes were filled with dreams, his heart full of plans. Mara stood by the dusty road, her hands pressed together, waving until the bus disappeared in a cloud of red dust. The wind carried her last words after him, soft, fragile, and full of hope. "Don't let the city change you, Zach." But as she turned back toward the empty compound, a quiet fear pressed against her chest. A voice she couldn't silence. "Love is strong," it whispered, "but sometimes ambition speaks louder." When Zach first arrived in Lagos, he thought the city would smile at him. Instead, it tested him. Nothing came easy. Not food, not rent, not rest. He rented half a room in a crumbling building where the walls peeled like old paint and the ceiling leaked whenever it rained. The other half of the room belonged to two strangers, men who snored like engines and dreamt aloud about being rich. Every morning before sunrise, Zach joined a crowd of hustlers waiting by the roadside for daily labor. Sometimes he got picked for construction work, sometimes he didn't. On bad days, he went hungry, living on sachet water and hope. The first time he earned 3,000 naira for a full day's work, he stared at the money in his hand and whispered, "I'll send half to Mara." It wasn't much, but it meant something. Proof that he was trying, that his promise wasn't just words. At night, when the city grew quiet, he sat by the window of that tiny room, looking at the blinking lights across the skyline. He wondered which of those windows hid the people who had made it. He wanted to be one of them, not forever poor, not forgotten. But as the weeks turned into months, the city began to wear him down. His skin grew darker under the sun, his back hot, his clothes thinned out. Sometimes he caught himself staring at people eating in restaurants, wondering what it felt like to walk in wearing a shirt that did smell of sweat and dust. And yet in his heart, he held on to Mara's voice, her laughter, her prayers, her faith. He replayed her face in his mind whenever he was tempted to give up. One night, exhausted and sore, he sat alone in a corner of a bus park, watching rainwater collect in potholes. He thought of home, of how Mara must be waiting, counting months, whispering his name in her prayers. The thought gave him strength. He clenched his fist and said quietly, I'll make it. I'll make her proud. But life in Lagos is never kind for too long. It gives you small victories only to see what you do with them. And soon, when Zach finally started to rise, when he finally found a stable job, that's when temptation came, wearing perfume and a smile. Zach's luck finally shifted the day he got a cleaning job at a mid-sized office in Ikeja. It wasn't glamour, but it paid better than construction, enough to buy food, send small money home, and still keep a dream alive. The office building was cool and bright, filled with air conditioning and quiet people who typed all day on shiny computers. Zach moved silently from desk to desk with his mop and bucket, careful not to disturb anyone. Most of them never looked at him twice. But Clara did. She was the new receptionist, young, confident, and always smelling like fresh flowers. Her smile was the kind that made you forget you were tired. The first time she greeted him, Zach thought it was by mistake. "Good morning," she said, her voice soft but clear. He hesitated before replying, "Good morning, ma." She laughed lightly. "No need for ma. I'm not your boss." It was a small moment, but something in Zach's chest shifted. In a city where people stepped over you without looking down, someone had finally seen him. Over the weeks, their greetings turned into conversations, short at first, then longer. "How long have you been in Lagos? Where's your family? Don't you ever rest?" Clara asked questions that made Zach feel like more than a cleaner. And each time she smiled at him, it melted a bit of the hardness the city had built inside him. One rainy afternoon, as thunder rumbled outside, she saw him sitting by the window during his break, eating plain bread with water. She frowned. "Is that your lunch?" He nodded, embarrassed. "I'll eat proper food later." "Proper food," she said, standing. "Wait here." She returned a few minutes later with a pack of jollof rice and chicken. "Here, eat. I can't watch you suffer like this." Zach wanted to refuse. Truly, he did. But hunger and kindness make a powerful mix. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice thick. Clara smiled. "You don't have to thank me. You work hard. You deserve better." From that day, things changed. Lunches became regular. Then came small gifts, a shirt, a wristwatch, even a perfume. Clara said she was just helping a friend. Zach told himself it meant nothing. But each act of kindness made it harder to remember Mara's voice, the one that warned him, "Don't let the city change you." Then came the night it rained too hard for him to leave. The office was quiet, the lights soft, and Clara stayed behind to finish paperwork. She made him tea. They talked for hours about dreams, about struggles, about everything and nothing. When he finally stood to go, she reached out and touched his hand. Her fingers were warm. Her eyes searching. "Zach," she said softly, "you don't always have to fight alone." For a second, the whole city went silent. The thunder, the rain, the hum of generators, everything faded. Zach felt something dangerous stir inside him. Not love, not yet, but a slow forgetting. That night, as he walked home through the rain, he tried to shake off the feeling. But no matter how far he walked, Clara's perfume followed him. Like temptation carried by the wind. Back in Maplewood, life had returned to a slow rhythm. Quiet mornings, gossiping afternoons, and lonely nights. The same dusty road that once carried Zach's laughter now carried only silence. Every evening, Mara sat on the wooden stool outside their hut, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed on the road that stretched toward nowhere. It had become a ritual, watching the sunset, listening to the faint sounds of life, and hoping that maybe, just maybe, she would see a familiar figure walking home. At first, Zach's letters came often. They were short but warm, written in his slightly crooked handwriting. He told her about the city, how tall the buildings were, how people walked like they were chasing time itself, how he was saving every naira to bring her there soon. Each letter felt like sunlight. Mara would hold them close to her chest before reading them aloud under the mango tree, smiling as if he were beside her. His words were her heartbeat. But as the months passed, the sunlight dimmed. The letters stopped coming as often. Then the phone calls came less too. First weekly, then monthly, then nothing. At first, Mara made excuses for him. He must be busy. The post office is slow. Maybe his job changed. But deep down, Her heart knew the truth before her mind could admit it. Love was changing its voice. She began writing to him more often, even when he didn't reply. Each letter was a mix of hope and quiet pain. Zach, I'm still waiting for your call. Your mother fell sick, but she's better now. The New Yam Festival is next week. The house feels empty without you. She will seal them carefully and hand them to the postman, forcing a smile every time he said, "Don't worry, it will get there." But the letter started to feel like prayers, spoken into the air, never answered. At the village market, whispers began to follow her. Has she heard from her husband? They say he's making money now. She still dresses like a newlywed, poor thing. Mara learned to pretend she didn't hear them, though each word stung like a needle. At night, she would kneel by her bed, whispering into the darkness, "Lord, keep him safe, and remember him of home." Sometimes, she would take his old shirt from the box under the bed and press it to her face. The scent had faded, but memory has its own smell, one that refuses to leave. Meanwhile, far away in Lagos, Zach was changing too, quietly, like morning becoming night. He still thought of Mara sometimes, when the city was too loud, when Clara's perfume was too strong, when loneliness crept through his expensive shirt. But each time he reached for his phone, guilt pulled his hand back. "I'll call her later," he would say. But later never came. He told himself he was building a future, that once he was successful, everything would make sense again. But what he didn't know was that every silence built a wall between them, brick by brick, until even memory began to sound like a stranger's voice. Back in Maplewood, Mara watched the moon that night and whispered, "Zach, can you still hear me from where you are?" But the only answer was the sound of crickets and the distant rustle of wind, the kind that carries no message, only reminders. The distance between them had grown too wide for letters, too silent for calls, and too heavy for dreams. Still, she waited, because love, when it's pure, doesn't know when to stop believing. The sun in Maplewood had changed. It didn't shine the same anymore, at least not to Mara. Days stretched long and empty, like waiting rooms with no clocks. Every morning, she woke up before dawn, lit the small lantern, and swept the front yard in silence. Her broom made soft, lonely sounds on the dusty ground. Shh. The same rhythm her heart had learned since Zach left. Then she would cook a small pot of porridge, enough for one person, and leave half of it untouched out of habit, for the man who might walk in any day. But the seat across from her stayed empty. At first, she used to smile through the loneliness. "He's busy," she told her neighbors. "He's working hard." She even defended him to the gossipers at the well, forcing laughter when they whispered, "That Lagos will soon take him away from her." She didn't want to believe them. She couldn't, because hope was all she had left, and hope, once broken, has no glue strong enough to fix it. In the first few months, letters arrived regularly, but after a while, the letters stopped coming. Weeks turned to months. The postman began to pass her compound without slowing down. Still, she wrote. Every Sunday after church, she sat at her small wooden table, dipped her pen into ink, and poured her heart onto paper. "Zach, I heard from your brother last week. Everyone is fine. I still wait for your call. Zach, the rainy season is here. I fixed the roof with Uncle Ben's help. Zach, I miss the sound of your laughter. Write soon, my love." She would fold the letters neatly and place them in a small basket by the window, one for each week. 30 letters, then 40, then 50. Each one carried a little more silence than the last. The village began to notice her sadness. One afternoon, as the sky darkened with the promise of rain, a knock echoed on her wooden door. Her heart leapt, too fast, too foolishly. She ran to the door, hope bursting through her like light through clouds. But it was only Obina, the postman. His eyes dropped the moment she opened the door. "No letters for you today, Madame Mara," he said softly. Her smile faltered. "None at all?" He shook his head. "Maybe next week." She nodded slowly, but her voice broke, when she tried to say, "All right." After he left, she sank to her knees and wept, not because of one missing letter, but because she knew the next one might never come. That evening, she went to the small chapel by the river, the same one where she and Zach had prayed before their wedding. The floor was cold, the candles flickering weakly, and the air smelled faintly of incense and dust. She knelt and whispered, "God, if he's alive, keep him safe. But if he's forgotten me, please teach my heart to stop remembering." The wind outside rustled the trees, like the heavens answering with a sigh. Meanwhile, far away in Lagos, Zach sat in a taxi staring out the window as the city flashed by. Bright lights, loud laughter, endless motion. Clara's perfume still lingered on his shirt. Her laughter echoed faintly in his head. He thought of calling Mara. He even picked up his phone once or twice. But guilt is a heavy hand, and every time he tried to dial her number, it pressed down on him, whispering, "Not tonight." He told himself she was fine, that she understood, that he would make it up to her someday. But the truth was simpler, sadder. He didn't know how to face the woman who still believed he was the same man she married. Back in Maplewood, months later, a new letter arrived. It wasn't from Zach. It was his cousin in Lagos. Mara's fingers trembled as she tore it open. The letter was short, just a few lines. Zach had moved to a new apartment. He was doing well. And yes, people said he was seeing someone. Mara read those words 3 times. Her vision blurred, her knees weakened, but she didn't cry. She simply folded the letter, placed it beside her basket of unanswered ones, and blew out the candle. The next morning, she woke before dawn again, swept the yard and cooked porridge for one. But this time, she didn't leave half of it untouched. Sometimes, love doesn't end with a goodbye. It ends with silence. And silence can hurt more than betrayal, because it leaves the heart waiting without an answer. But fate is not finished. One afternoon, long after the gossip had quietened, and Mara had learned to live with her loneliness, a bus stopped outside her compound. A tall man stepped down, wearing fine clothes and dark glasses. He looked familiar, but not the same. And when he smiled, it wasn't the smile she remembered. It was colder, older, heavier. Mara froze. Her heart stumbled in her chest. "Zach," she whispered. He didn't reply. He only looked at her, long and strange, as if seeing a shadow from another life. The wind picked up, scattering dry leaves between them. And for the first time in years, Mara felt her heart tremble not with love, but with fear. This was only the beginning. In part 2, Fate will finally reveal what silence was hiding.